My boyfriend called me ugly in front of his friends and dumped me at a restaurant. I thought that night would destroy me, but it became the start of something powerful. From public humiliation to private healing, this is the raw, emotional story of how I lost everything and found myself. You won't believe how it ends. I still remember the dress I wore that night. It was a soft lavender color, not flashy, but elegant. I had spent an hour getting ready, curling my hair just the way Daniel liked it, applying my makeup carefully, hoping tonight would be special. Daniel and I had been dating for nearly a year. Things weren't perfect, no relationship is, but I believed we were in love. He wasn't always affectionate in public, but he was charming, ambitious, and had this way of making you feel like the center of his world when he wanted to. That night, he invited me to dinner with his close friends, something he rarely did. I was nervous but excited. This felt like a step forward. The restaurant was upscale, dimly lit, with soft jazz music floating in the background. His friends were already seated when we arrived. I smiled, said hello, and sat down quietly next to Daniel. That's when I started feeling it. You know that cold distance people give off when they're pretending to be polite? That was the vibe. His friends barely looked at me. One of them, a girl named Casey, didn't even try to hide the smirk she gave me. Still, I tried to stay positive. I asked questions, laughed at their jokes, tried to join the conversation, but it was like I was invisible. Then came the moment I can't forget. The waiter had just brought our drinks when one of the guys, joking around, asked Daniel what he was doing with a plain girl like me. I froze. I felt my stomach drop. And instead of defending me, instead of saying I was beautiful or even just special to him, Daniel laughed. Laughed like it was the funniest thing in the world. Then, as if that wasn't enough, he casually said, "Well, she's not exactly a model, but she's all right." His friends burst out laughing. I sat there, stunned. My cheeks burned. I couldn't tell if it was anger or heartbreak taking over. Daniel didn't even look at me. I stared down at my drink, my fingers shaking, trying not to cry in front of strangers. I felt so small, like I didn't belong at that table, in that relationship, or even in my own skin. But it wasn't over yet, because just 10 minutes later, in the middle of dessert, Daniel looked over at me and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Hey, maybe we should stop pretending. This isn't really working out." And then he smiled, that fake cold smile, and added, "You deserve someone more on your level, right?" Then he stood up, dropped some cash on the table, and walked out, just like that. I sat there, humiliated, dumped, and left to pay the rest of the bill. I wish I could say I ran after him and screamed or threw water in his face, but I didn't. I just sat there, like a fool, trying to hold back tears while his friends awkwardly looked away. That night shattered something inside me. But what Daniel didn't know, what I didn't know yet, was that this moment, as painful as it was, would be the beginning of something much bigger. What happens when the person you trusted the most tears you down in front of a crowd? Stay with me, because what follows isn't just heartbreak, it's a transformation. And trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. The moment Daniel walked out, the room started spinning. Not literally, but it felt like everything had tilted off balance. The sound of clinking glasses, light conversations, and soft jazz music suddenly felt louder, like background noise mocking me. I sat there, trying to breathe through the storm brewing in my chest. No one said a word to me. His friends just continued their conversation like nothing had happened. Not one of them looked up. Not one of them asked if I was okay. That silence, that was louder than Daniel's cruel words. I remember grabbing my purse with shaky hands, fumbling for my wallet. The bill wasn't much, but the shame of paying for a meal where I'd just been publicly humiliated, that price was far heavier. I walked out of the restaurant into the cold night air. It had rained earlier, and the pavement glistened under the streetlights. I stood on the sidewalk, staring blankly ahead, not knowing whether to cry, scream, or just collapse right there. And then, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Daniel. Not an apology, Not even a, "Are you okay?" Just 3 words. "You'll be fine." I stared at the screen, heart pounding. "You'll be fine?" Like I was some burden he'd finally shaken off. Like the year we spent together meant nothing. I started walking. I didn't know where I was going. Just anywhere that wasn't near that place. My apartment was only 10 minutes away, but each step felt heavier than the last. When I finally made it home, I collapsed on my bed and cried. Not just because of what he said, not just because he left me, but because deep down, I had let him make me believe I wasn't enough. I started replaying every red flag I had ignored. The subtle jabs at my appearance, the way he only complimented me when we were alone, how he always made sure I knew he could do better, but he chose to be with me out of kindness. How had I missed it? No, I didn't miss it. I ignored it. Because I wanted to believe he loved me. Because I thought if I just tried harder, dressed better, stayed quiet when he got moody, laughed at his dry jokes, maybe he'd truly see me. But he never saw me. He only saw someone he could control. Someone who'd be grateful for the bare minimum. Someone he could belittle in public and expect silence in return. That night, as I wiped away tears with the sleeve of my hoodie, something in me cracked open. Not in a broken way, in a waking up kind of way. I looked at myself in the mirror, puffy eyes, mascara smeared, and whispered something out loud for the first time in years. "You deserve better." I didn't fully believe it yet, but saying it felt powerful, like lighting a tiny match in a room full of darkness. Have you ever been so hurt that it forces you to finally open your eyes? Stick with me, because in the next chapter, I start rebuilding, and I find strength in the most unexpected place. The morning after that night was rough. I didn't sleep much. My pillow was still damp, and my eyes were swollen to the point I didn't even recognize myself in the mirror. It's strange, not because of how I looked, but because I saw something different in my eyes. It wasn't just pain anymore. It was anger, quiet, cold anger. Not the kind that makes you lash out, but the kind that simmers under your skin, telling you, you can't let this be the end. I sat at my little kitchen table, sipping burnt coffee, staring at my phone. No new messages from Daniel, no calls, no, "I'm sorry," no, "let me explain." Nothing. He really meant it. I kept thinking about all the moments that led to this. The time he told me not to wear red lipstick because it made my lips look too full. The time he introduced me to a coworker and said, "This is Sarah, my humble girlfriend." And the time I cried in front of him, and he rolled his eyes and said I was too emotional. I thought love was supposed to feel warm, like safety. But with Daniel, it always felt like I was being measured and always falling short. I opened my camera roll, scrolling through pictures of us. My smile in those photos looked real, but now I realize it wasn't joy. It was me trying to hold on, trying to convince myself this was enough. And then I got to the last photo. It was taken just a week ago. I was laughing at something he said. He wasn't even smiling in the picture, just staring at me with that smug look I used to call confident. I stared at it for a long time before finally pressing delete. One by one, I started clearing out every photo, every screenshot, every text thread. Not because I wanted to forget, but because I needed space. Not just on my phone, but in my life. Midway through the cleanup, I got a message. Not from Daniel. From my best friend, Leah. She had no idea what had happened, but she texted something simple. "Hey, thinking of you today. Want to do brunch tomorrow? My treat." I stared at that message and broke down again. But this time, it wasn't sadness. It was relief. Because even though Daniel had made me feel invisible, someone still saw me, and that meant everything. The next day, I showed up to brunch. No makeup, hair in a messy bun, sunglasses on. And Leah just hugged me, like I hadn't been shattered the night before. Over coffee and pancakes, I told her everything. She didn't interrupt. She didn't try to fix it. She just listened. And when I finally ran out of words, she looked me dead in the eye and said, "You are not ugly. You are just underappreciated." That sentence hit me like a wave, because it wasn't just about looks, it was about worth. And for the first time, I started to believe it. Hey, if you've ever been made to feel less than, remember this. Your worth isn't measured by how someone treats you. It's measured by how you rise after they leave. Stick around. After that, I stop surviving and start fighting for myself. The days after brunch with Leah were strangely quiet. Not the sad kind of quiet, though. More like peaceful. I deleted Daniel's number, blocked him on everything. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I finally realized he didn't deserve even a single moment more of my attention. I had spent so long chasing validation from him that I forgot how to give any to myself. So I started small. I made my bed every morning. I lit a candle while making breakfast, even if it was just cereal. I bought myself flowers from the corner store. Not because it was a special day, but because I am worth celebrating. I didn't post anything online. I didn't want to pretend I was thriving when I was still healing. This wasn't about proving a point to anyone. This was about finding myself again. I started journaling every night, just a few lines. Some days it was angry scribbles like, "Why did I let him treat me like that?" Other nights it was softer. "I smiled today. For real." And slowly, that fire inside me started to grow. One afternoon, I passed by a yoga studio near my apartment. I'd walked by it 100 times, but never once stepped in. I don't know what made me do it that day. Maybe I just wanted to feel something new, something mine. I signed up for a beginner's class. I was terrible. My balance was off, my breathing was weird, and I felt like my body was made of bricks. But no one judged me. No one looked at me like I didn't belong. In fact, the instructor gave me the warmest smile and said, "You showed up. That's already enough." That sentence stuck with me, because for so long I had felt like nothing I did was enough. But here I was, sweaty, out of breath, red-faced, and still, I felt more seen than I ever had with Daniel. Midway through class, we did a pose called Warrior, standing tall, arms stretched, eyes forward. And something about it made me tear up, not out of pain, but because for the first time in forever, I felt strong. When class ended, I walked home with sore legs and a quiet kind of pride. I was healing, not through grand gestures or dramatic changes, but through tiny decisions that reminded me, I matter. And here's the wild part. People noticed. Leah said my energy was different. My coworker asked if I'd changed something about my hair. Even the barista at my usual coffee place smiled and said, "You look happy today." And I was. Not because I had everything figured out, but because I was finally choosing me. If you're still watching, maybe you need this reminder too. You don't have to be perfect to start over. You just have to begin. In the next chapter, someone from my past shows up again. But this time, I'm not the same girl anymore. It had been almost a month since that night at the restaurant. Since Daniel humiliated me, walked away, and left me to rebuild myself from scratch. And I was doing it, slowly but surely. I wasn't crying every night anymore. I had picked up new routines. I smiled more. I felt lighter. Then one evening, just as I was coming home from a yoga class, I saw it. A message request. From him. Daniel. I froze. For a moment, I just stared at my phone like it had betrayed me. My heart started pounding. Not out of longing, but from something I hadn't expected. Disgust. Still, I opened the message. It said, "Hey, been thinking about you. Can we talk?" That was it. No apology, no explanation. Just those empty words. I sat down on my couch, my gym bag still on my shoulder, and I just laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was pathetic. After everything he said, after everything he did, now he wanted to talk? I didn't reply. But curiosity got the best of me. I clicked on his profile. He had posted a photo recently, a group shot. Him, some friends, and next to him, a girl. beautiful, perfect makeup, that same smug grin on his face. It stung for a second, not because I missed him, but because I realized he hadn't changed. He'd just moved on to the next person who'd let him feel superior. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I locked my phone, set it down, and made dinner. I ate in peace, watched a silly movie, and even danced a little in my kitchen while waiting for the pasta to boil. The next day, I got another message. This time, I miss what we had. I messed up. Let me make it up to you. I didn't reply to that either. Instead, I screenshotted it, sent it to Leah with the caption, "Look who's crawling back." She replied instantly, "Block him. Energy vampire." I laughed so hard, I nearly dropped my phone. But here's the thing. The old me would have been tempted. The girl who sat at that restaurant with tear-filled eyes might have read that message and thought, maybe he's changed. Maybe I should give him another chance. But the me sitting there now, she knew better. Daniel wasn't sorry. He was bored. He didn't miss me. He missed having control. So I did the only thing that felt right. I blocked him. On everything. And as soon as I did, I felt free. Like I had just shut the door on a chapter I was finally done rereading. Sometimes the people who break us come back when they sense we're healing. Not because they love us, but because they hate losing their grip. But guess what? In Chapter 6, I finally stopped looking backward. And something, or someone, new enters my life. After I blocked Daniel, something shifted inside me. It wasn't just peace, it was power. I had made a choice, not out of fear or hurt, but out of clarity. And it felt incredible. I was learning to enjoy my own company again. I'd go on walks without music, just listening to the sounds of the world. I'd sit at a cafe with a book, sipping my coffee slowly, like I had all the time in the world. Because for once, I wasn't rushing to meet someone else's expectations. Then one day, it happened. I was at the bookstore, this cozy little spot tucked away near downtown. The kind of place that smells like old paper and cinnamon tea. I was in the fiction aisle, reaching for a copy of a novel I'd been meaning to read, when our hands touched. Literally. His hand brushed mine. I pulled away instinctively, mumbling, "Sorry." He smiled, not the smirk I was used to, but a soft, warm smile. "No worries," he said. "You've got good taste. That's a great book." We ended up talking for 15 minutes right there in the aisle. His name was Ethan, and he had the kind of presence that didn't feel like pressure. It felt like ease. We didn't exchange numbers. We just laughed, chatted about books, and then went our separate ways. I thought that was it. But life had other plans. 2 weeks later, I ran into him again, at a coffee shop across town. He recognized me immediately. "Book girl," he called out, raising his cup. I couldn't help but laugh. "Fiction guy," I replied. That second meeting turned into coffee. Coffee turned into long conversations. And conversations turned into something I hadn't felt in a long time. Connection. He never commented on my looks. He asked about my dreams. He listened when I talked. And when I paused to collect my thoughts, he waited, patiently. I told Leah about him, and she grinned like she already knew. "Maybe the universe had to pull the wrong guy out," she said, "so the right one could walk in." But here's the thing. It wasn't about finding someone new to love me. It was about realizing I didn't need anyone to prove my worth. Ethan didn't save me, he saw me. And because I had started seeing myself first, I didn't shrink under that attention. I didn't question whether I was enough. I just was. One night, while we sat on a park bench watching the sunset, he looked at me and said, "You seem like someone who's been through fire, but somehow came out shining." I smiled and replied, "I didn't shine because of the fire. I shined because I stopped putting it out for everyone else." Here's something I want you to remember. Healing isn't about finding someone new. It's about finding yourself and learning to protect your light. After that, the story comes full circle, and I face the one person I never thought I'd have the strength to stand up to, myself. It was a rainy Sunday afternoon when it happened. I was cleaning out my closet, something I had been putting off for months. There were boxes shoved into corners, old sweaters I hadn't worn in years, and a shoebox tucked way in the back. I opened it. Inside were bits and pieces of my old life with Daniel. A movie ticket from our first date. A dried rose he gave me on my birthday. A scribbled note he once left on my fridge saying, "Don't wait up." I stared at those items, and it felt like I was looking at artifacts from someone else's life. That girl, she was me, but not this me. And just like that, the tears came. Not the heavy, choking sobs I used to cry. These were quieter, softer, the kind of tears that come when you're finally ready to let go. I sat on the floor, surrounded by that box of memories, and I whispered to myself, "I forgive you, not Daniel, me." Because I had spent so long blaming myself for not being prettier, for not standing up for myself sooner, for staying, for loving someone who didn't love me the way I deserved. But I didn't know better then. And when you don't know better, you try to love with what you have, even if all you have is hope and heartache. I got up, took the box to the trash, and let it go. Physically, emotionally, symbolically. I looked in the mirror afterward. Same face, same eyes. But everything felt different. For the first time, I didn't see flaws. I didn't see someone who needed fixing. I saw someone who had survived. Someone who had rebuilt. Someone who had chosen herself. That night, I wrote a letter. Not to Daniel, not to Ethan, but to the girl I used to be. It said, "You didn't know you were enough, but you were. You didn't know he was wrong, but he was. And now you know better. So walk forward with your head high. You didn't lose him, you found you." I folded that letter and tucked it into my journal, because someday I might need to read it again, or maybe someone else will, and I'll hand it to them and say, "Here. I wrote this when I finally remembered who I was. If you're still here, maybe this is what you needed today. You are not broken, you are becoming." And in the last, I'll show you how it all came full circle, and how the pain that once tried to bury me actually planted something beautiful. It's been nearly a year since that night at the restaurant. The night Daniel called me ugly in front of his friends. The night he left me sitting there with the bill. The night my heart shattered in public. But now, I look back, and I don't feel broken. I feel reborn. I wish I could tell you healing is linear, that you wake up one day and everything suddenly makes sense. But it's not like that. It's messy, it's slow, it's silent. Healing is crying in the shower where no one can hear you. Then, laughing at a silly meme 2 hours later. It's deleting his number, then dreaming about him the next night. It's saying, "I'm fine," and then learning to mean it. But one day, you'll wake up and you won't think about them first. You'll pass a mirror and like what you see. You'll hear your own laugh and realize it's real again. And when that happens, it's magic. A few weeks ago, I passed by that same restaurant, the one where it all ended. I almost didn't recognize it. It had new paint, new signs, a new name. And just like that, it hit me. Even places change. Even pain can be renovated. I walked in, not because I wanted to relive anything, but because I wasn't afraid anymore. I sat at a different table, ordered a latte, and as I looked around, I felt nothing but peace. That table, the one where I once cried into my napkin, humiliated and heartbroken, was now just a piece of wood. A part of my story, not the whole thing. Ethan met me there 20 minutes later. He walked in, saw me smiling, and kissed the top of my head. We talked, we laughed, we shared fries. And for a brief moment, I thought, this is what it feels like to be chosen, without having to beg for it. But here's the real truth. Even if Ethan never walked into my life, even if I stayed single forever, I still would have been okay. Because I learned the hardest and most beautiful lesson of all. You don't need someone else to fix you. You need to remember that you were never broken. Daniel didn't ruin my life. He redirected it. He pushed me so low that the only option was to rise. and rise. I did. Now, when I tell people my story, they always ask, "Do you regret it?" And the honest answer? Number. Because without that pain, I would have never met me. If you've made it this far, I want to thank you. Not just for listening to my story, but for feeling it. If you've ever been where I was, please know, your worth doesn't shrink because someone failed to see it. You are not what they called you. You are what you become after they're gone. And if this story made you feel something, share it with someone who might need it. Because healing isn't just about surviving, it's about thriving, loudly, freely, and unapologetically. This is me. And I'm not ugly, I'm unstoppable. If you've ever felt like my story was a page out of your own life, leave a comment below saying, "I choose me." Let's flood this space with people who are done settling, done shrinking, done breaking for people who don't know how to love. Hit subscribe if you're ready for more stories that feel like real life. Raw, human, emotional, and never forget, you're not alone in this.